Welcome to Can't Shelve This, the podcast where we hammer home the importance of school libraries. I'm Leah Gregory, and I'm joined by my co-host, Janette Turecki.
Hey, everyone.
And our producer, Ola Gronsky.
Hi, everybody.
Before we get started, we want to take a minute to address something that was called to our attention by one of our listeners.
Someone from Chicago State University reached out to let us know that in an earlier episode this season, I mistakenly shared that the University of Illinois and Dominican University are the only two programs in the state of Illinois where you can get a master's in library science along with your school library endorsement. And that is completely false. That list should have included Chicago State, and I apologize for that oversight. Thank you so much for reaching out. I really appreciate the opportunity to set the record straight.
And that's always great news. We could use more ways and places to get people licensed as librarians.
I should point out that our other programs, like you don't have to have a master's in library science in order to be a licensed librarian in Illinois. So there are other schools in the state that do offer library endorsement programs. And I want to refer our listeners to the Illinois State Board of Education's website. They will always have the most current and up-to-date information on programs that are approved by them.
And very soon, the Illinois State Board of Education is coming out with a brand new Pathways document. So Pathways to School Librarianship that we've been working with them on. We're very excited to see that.
Yeah, that's going to be really great. I think it's going to help clarify like what people need to do if they're interested in being a school librarian. Like you mentioned, we're always looking to grow the profession. We have a huge school librarian shortage in our state. So hopefully we can get some more people in that program.
So today I want to talk about awards for films, music, books. Are you big followers of award shows and always have to read, watch, or listen to the award winners? Or do you just like what you like and you don't care? I will confess, I used to be a huge Oscar snob. I used to always try to see all of the Oscar nominated films. And then I just got exhausted and I quit doing that.
I don't really follow awards shows. I mean, growing up I did because it was kind of like on Sunday night, that was the thing you did as a family. We all sat down and watched. And a lot of times we had seen some of those movies or the TV shows or, whatever award it was for. I have never really, I'm probably going to get shooed out of the library community for this. I've never really been, outside of the Caldecott Awards, a huge proponent of book lists. I do look at them, but I don't really feel compelled to stick to them or read from them. If the books on there don't interest me, then that's fine. I think it's, great that people are raising awareness about different types of books and genres and things like that, but it's not something I feel a need to do. What about you, Ola?
If we're talking book lists, I feel like the children's in the YA, the A books, all of those are so good, but why do we lose that with the adult fiction book lists? Or the adult fiction book lists to me are very similar to the Oscar nominees, where I'm just where did we lose the fun and the plots and the everything seems a little
everything
out there.
Has to be so serious.
Everything needs to have a hidden meaning. I have watched a lot of the Oscar movies this year, but I hate when I finish the movie and I'm what just happened? I shouldn't be confused after reading a book or watching a movie. Is the confusion why people think it's award worthy?
I think so. It's clearly this is a great film because I can't understand it. That's kind of how I feel.
Is it that whole concept of people think you're really smart if you use words that are hard to understand or that they're not familiar with? And even if you're not actually very smart, you can sell people on the idea that they should pay attention to you. I think there's some truth to that. But I do feel sometimes we overthink what is award winning and maybe it has to be very cerebral to some people. And I do like books to be thought provoking, but I don't think they need to be written at some super high Lexile level for it to be thought provoking, right? A picture book is thought provoking.
Yes. The most frustrating thing is when I'm reading a book and I hate reading a sentence where I then have to go back and be is my brain broken or is the writing broken? I don't want to have to question my comprehension and sanity when I'm consuming something for entertainment, because really all of this is entertainment, right?
Yes, I want to be entertained. I do not want to be assessing high art at all times. Sometimes I do enjoy an art film or a very intense book, but We once were in a movie. The people behind us were like chatting before the movie started. And they're like, oh, have you seen this film? Oh, I've seen that film. I love that film. That was a great film. And I'm like, people, we're in Batman. Like, this is not like a film, okay? Like,
I mean, I think I said it on the last episode, like not every book you read needs to save your life. And I feel the same way about movies. Like it doesn't all have to be life-changing. It can just be entertaining.
and that's what I want 99% of the time. My husband will watch anything. He'll watch anything and he'll be like, I found it interesting. I like to watch it because it was interesting. It can't merely be interesting. Like I find like slime mold interesting, but I don't want to watch it for hours. I want to be entertained. Like take me out of my head.
And I will say I will watch the awards show though because of that, right? So sometimes I'll watch the award shows not knowing any of the nominees because I just want to see like the celebrities, what they're wearing, what they're going to say.
I want to see what they're wearing.
I want to be a part of the pop culture conversations following the event. So I'm pro award event, but not so much the content and lists, I guess.
I can see that. That's totally understandable. I guess too, like thinking about it from the perspective of like that's their profession, so they should be experts and know a lot about it. So surely there are things that I'm gonna miss as just like a general, consumer of media.
I don't know. I don't trust. I think they're just totally randomly voting for like whatever makes them look smartest or whoever spent the most money on the campaign to get the award. Because
I think this is my petition for simpler stories.
Shorter movies.
Shorter,
too.
Absolutely. Stop making movies over 2 hours. That is the hill I will die on. But like, have we just been inundated with so many stories that we've run out of ideas, and that's why like movies and things are just getting more confusing? Like sometimes I don't think that you need to create something super new. Like,
I mean, there are a lot of remakes out there right now. And I think that kind of stems from the whole concept of like, there's not really a lot of new original ideas.
Yeah.
I'm just like, if you're going to do it well. Don't just slap something together, right?
Well, apparently they did do it well. But again, subjective. Not according to the Can't Shelve This group.
Yeah. So like, I loved Sinners. It was a big Oscar nominee,
Sinners
right?
was great.
I don't necessarily think it's like up there with The Godfather, though. You know what I mean? When you're talking about like Best Picture or whatever. I did like it, but
I think that's exactly what it is. I think about old Oscar award-winning movies, and then I think of like what's been like the past 5 years, and I just like, where did the shift happen? It's weird. And now I feel like a crotchety old woman being like, they don't make films like they used to back in my day. But
it's
like
true,
genuinely,
so
it's
true,
an
though.
interesting, like how it reflects society and like what captures our attention. I just think it's an interesting, like psychological, sociological topic.
before we welcome our guests, I wanted to wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. It has long been a big holiday in our house, so I hope the leprechaun visits you all and brings you some chocolate.
Yes. So
Yes,
fun.
please. And money, maybe. That'd be nice.
Yes, from their pot of gold.
Right. Please bring extra money. Okay. Anyway.
Today we're joined by Veronica Ramos
Hi.
and Rosie Camargo.
Hello.
Veronica, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got involved with WEPA Libros?
First of all, thank you for Leah and Janette for having me. Rosie, it's always a pleasure seeing your beautiful face. To give you a little bit of background of my personal and professional life that led me to WEPA Libros, I spent a little bit over a decade in education, specifically in the multilingual education realm, starting as an ESL teacher in a community in northern Chicagoland where there was more than 60 languages that were spoken in our student population. So early in my career, I became very aware that I was working with cultures, languages, and even migration experiences that I had never personally been in close relationship for before. And so that realization pushed me to seek deeper understanding outside of my classroom walls, my school building walls. And that's when I became involved in refugee resettlement and immigrant serving organizations as a volunteer because I had all that time as a teacher. Yeah, right. In that, I really was seeking proximity and lived experience, not just professional knowledge, to better understand the communities I was serving at that time. Some of the prominent groups were kind of Arabic speaking refugees, a Syrian community, and even like Western African communities. So from there, I transitioned into district level leadership in a Title I district that was about 87% Latino, where our focus was moving towards district-wide dual language. So bilingualism wasn't treated as a support service for some students and more as an asset for all students. From there, later I worked in higher ed as an instructor and mentor supporting the bilingual teacher pipeline in Chicago. After about 10 years across those settings, that work truly became the catalyst for what I do now, working alongside schools and public libraries supporting multilingual literacy and sustainable collections. But this work for me is very personal. My family is from rural Puerto Rico, where agriculture has been the main line of work for generations in my family, and access to education wasn't guaranteed. So growing up, I saw how home language literacy, or the lack of access to it, shaped what was possible across generations. I carry that history with me as part of why this work feels a lot less like a job, and it's truly more of a responsibility that I feel.
Thank you. And Rosie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, including your work as a librarian and Miss Rosie Reads?
So my position at my current library is Cultural Literacy Specialist, which was a newer kind of title. I was very grateful for this new position, but I even asked them, like, what does that mean? And they're like, what do you want it to mean? I was like, okay. And I've kind of just took it on as I make sure that my community is represented throughout the library. Our displays, our programs, our flyers, our newsletter, like as much of that as possible. I went to Dunkin' Donuts and I saw an Indian family, because my library is in South Holland, Illinois, which is border to Hammond, Indiana. It's a very conservative area. We don't have a lot of ethnically diverse, which I thought. But as I've been working there for 3-4 years now and going to the Dunkin' Donuts, going to the restaurants, going to places and meeting the families and meeting, like when I saw that family from India working the Dunkin' Donuts, I was just like, do you guys live here? And they're like, yes, we do. And I was like, awesome. And I'm like, went back to work, started ordering all like Indian books that I could get about holidays and holly and everything, because I want, if that family were to ever walk into my library, I want them to see themselves. So that's what I've been doing with that. And with Miss Rosie Reads, it kind of just happened so I always tell people, like, before COVID and during COVID.
Yes, before times. Yes.
The before times. So Miss Rosie Reads came out of during COVID times. It was as we discovered, like, when things had to go virtual and schools had to supply computers, because then they realized children don't have computers at home. And there's language barriers because now there are parents who don't speak English but have been sending their kids to English school, And so then it was very like the buzzword EDI, and my then manager of my library was like, I would like you to join, I think it was the Rails EDI committee. And I was like, what's EDI? And he was just like, guess you'll find out when you're in it, And I was like, okay. And then as I started progressing, things that I went through as a student, as a first generation student in Chicago public schools and in private schools, I was like, oh, this is still happening? Oh, these are still issues? And so then I started really realizing, like, what is it that the public libraries could provide that schools, because of budget or funding or lack of administration or professional people or language people, like, what can I then provide as support? During that time, my daughter also started school, and she started at Chicago Public School, and it's a dual language school. It's very rare, but this particular school goes from preschool all the way to 8th grade, integrating English as they go. So when you're in preschool there, you're 100% Spanish. The teachers, the writing materials, everything is in Spanish. And then as they progress in grades, 10% English is added on. By the time they're in junior high, it's half and half, and they are going to receive a biliteracy seal. And so what the nice thing was that my sister got the job of being the school librarian. And she is an immigrant. She's an American citizen now, and she speaks Spanish fluently. So it was great. It's a dual language school. It's a bilingual librarian. And she's not a certified librarian, but I feel like I've trained her well. She's my young Jedi. And then like with that, Miss Rosie Reeds has just been trying to create inclusiveness, helping librarians who want to do multicultural programming but don't know how to do it. Maybe they're in a rural area. Maybe they don't have staff that speak Spanish. What could they do? And a little plug, this summer at ALA Editions will be releasing my book. I co-wrote a book with the Lavender librarian. Her name is Kate Reynolds. Thank you. And it's called Storytime Survival Guide. And it's kind of teaching librarians how to do those inclusive and welcoming story times, because it all starts with that. I always tell people, like, when people come into a story time, that's their experience of what the library is going to be like, and you don't know where to start sometimes.
I cannot wait to get into all of this with you both. I'm just so excited. But I have a very hard-hitting question that we start everybody with. What kind of a reader are you? Are you primarily a print book reader, an ebook reader, or an audiobook reader?
I'm definitely print. I grew up just like loving the smell of books, of the smell of walking into a library, whether it's like you can smell the difference between like an older book and like one that was just published. Being a mom, I've recently gotten into listening in my car to books that's like the only space I can have to myself sometimes.
100%.
It's my drive to and from work. So my heart prefers paper, but sometimes my mom life kind of gives into the realities of 21st century.
It's the season of life. What about you, Rosie?
I've always had long commutes to work. So I was introduced to audiobooks. I worked for 20 years at a children's bookstore in Oak Park called Magic Tree Bookstore. So like I only knew books, that fresh book smell, Veronica. Oh my gosh. I would open those boxes from Baker and Taylor and Ingram, and it literally would go like, like, I loved it. I loved being the first one. I would get so excited because I'd be the first one to touch the book. I'm like, I'm touching every single book. It was my favorite.
There is something about that smell.
Yes.
I'm like, why is that a car air freshener smell?
Yeah. Oh my
God.
That's
It should
genius.
It's a very distinct paper smell.
I think you just found our $1 million idea, Rosie.
I think so. Yeah.
I've seen candles, but not car air fresheners.
I will tell you guys, the smell of a library actually led me to where I am today, because I did not have a library background or an education background. And I went back to school later in life, and I was accepted into the U of I's library master's program. And I was on campus and I was walking around on my first day, and I'm just like, I can't do this. I'm too old. I'm too old to make this change. I can't do this. But I wandered into the library and I just like inhaled the smell of the library. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm staying. So
I wonder what a bilingual book would smell like.
A bilingual book?
Yeah, I maybe put like paper and guayaba.
Depending on your region. Well, they smell like coconuts or... Yeah, I love audiobooks. Right now, it's been my thing. I read books every day. I do story time 3 times a week. So like picture books are my jam. But like audiobooks, it's just, I love being read to. I love being read to. And that moment, like I still react when my character, something happens to him. I'm like, oh, what? You know, like exciting. Like there's nothing like the feeling of being read to. And so I've really enjoyed audiobooks because of that.
And I wonder too if that's kind of like your inner Latina, because that's also very cultural. Oral storytelling is something many immigrants grew up with, prior to written words, like your abuelo
The
story
oral
or your
tradition.
mother.
Yes.
Yes. That's really interesting you say that.
Yeah, and I think it's like that kind of connection and creating the community, but also like it lights up things in your brain that are really important. So thinking about like your, personal and cognitive growth, like it's important to have that. There's been a lot of research, not to make this about, cognition, but I think I've even talked about this before maybe, but there's a lot of research that's been done that it lights up the exact same areas that are triggered when you read yourself. So hearing that story, it does count as reading. That's like my scientific proof that I'm keep doing it. I have apparently an attention deficit problem when it comes to audiobooks.
Me too.
Just tune out. Now, if my grandfather was telling me a story, as a child, like I definitely was riveted. So maybe there's the difference in the community aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like when you have audiobooks, especially like let's say you're a hesitant reader, like, oh, this book is about a Filipino family. I would love to read it, but I don't know. You skip the names, you skip the countries, you skip some of the dishes that they mention because you don't know how to pronounce it.
Keep it real, Rosie. I know all of us do it. Let's be real.
Right? When you do an audiobook though, I always check who's the reader. Are they of that culture? And then I get to learn how to pronounce things, people's names, some cultural dishes. Then I love going to the restaurants and looking for, like right now I'm really into, I don't know, is that a genre? The foodie books?
Yeah,
I think
know what
it
you're
is.
talking
Yes,
about.
for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm obsessed with Mia P. Mansala. It's called the Tita Rosie's Kitchen. They're cozy mysteries. So there's like a murder, but there's no like slasher stuff.
I love that.
It's all about her family's restaurant. I love that because whatever hesitant I would feel about, well, I probably wouldn't read that. The audio is like not that dangerous.
I will say though, that's one of the reasons I love like my e-reader though, is what you're talking about, like coming across names of dishes that you're not familiar with or reading about cultures other than your own. Like I've learned a lot. My husband's like, you got like a browser tab open on everything. Like I'm reading, I'm looking things up, but also like in my e-reader, just being able to like use the dictionary function, it will tell you, it'll describe the dish. Like where is it eaten? What is it made with? Things like that. So I love that part of it.
That is such a cool tip and just approach towards very accessible, like low-hanging fruit of learning about communities.
And as somebody who has a lifelong habit of mispronouncing words I have only ever read, I do appreciate that where you're coming from with that. Because my family still makes fun of me because I have a gazebo in my front yard, not a gazebo. Because how would I know? I never heard it pronounced.
Okay, even I didn't know what you were trying to say, and I know you have a gazebo. Before we get too much into the discussion about multilingual learners, I feel like it's important for us to really acknowledge a lot of what's happening in the United States right now and really globally, but especially here at home with regard to immigration and immigration reform and kind of the fear that our communities are feeling and what might be impacting students and patrons at libraries and how that affects librarians. Regardless of which side of this debate you are on, you are serving these communities, and it's important to understand, what they're facing and why it's important for them to have access to the materials and resources that they need. And it's important for them to feel safe doing so.
I identify with this crisis that is happening because my family immigrated from Colombia to the United States, and they worked really hard to become American citizens. They worked really hard to raise the rest of us that were born here. So it's really disheartening when you see families, your own and your patrons, having to carry their passports to leave their house, to go to the grocery store, to do their everyday thing. It's really difficult to see libraries who provide programming and not see the families anymore. I'm part of Spark, which is a Spanish programming and resources for kids networking group. for Rails. And that's been our thing. We were so excited. We always get excited for Hispanic Heritage Month. We think it's so important to bring that representation to our libraries. And many of us were struggling. Do we do anything? Do we create programs that could endanger? Do we still do it? Do we do it in a different way? Do we offer it virtually instead? And that conversation was very surreal. Felt like I was in World War II, where families are like, I don't want to endanger our families, but I want our patrons to know. So my big advocacy was do it, because a community doesn't create empathy unless they know their neighbor, right? If they don't know who their neighbor is, they won't stand up for them. But if they come to a library program, if they are seeing displays, and then they'll understand. I had a patron who came to a Spanish cooking class, and we were talking about that, and she was unaware of what was happening. And she literally said, is that why my neighbor hasn't been coming out with me anymore? We used to do stuff together, and she's not coming out with me. And I told her, I'm like, that would be great for you to ask her. Maybe she doesn't feel safe leaving her home right now. So that was a moment that we could talk. And I think that we need to bring awareness because people don't know the full extent. We know what is happening to our friends, our relatives, our neighbors, our children going to school, our children not going to school because they're afraid to go to school. So if that knowledge and awareness is out there, then that's how our community also feels supported.
We've heard a lot from different types of librarians, public librarians, school librarians, academic librarians, trying to kind of meet the needs of their communities around this issue, right? And I feel like I want to focus especially on school libraries right now because most kids are still going to school. I know that kids will go to talk to their school librarians and express that they're worried and concerned that their parents won't be there when they get home or things like that. But I feel like a lot of families aren't going to the public library right now because they do feel like that could be a potential target since it is a free and open space. But schools are still somewhat protected, right? Students do have rights on their campuses and the administration will protect them. So I feel like school libraries really have a moment right now where they need to fill that gap so that in some cases that might be the only access to information and literature a kid has right now. So it's extra important that they find, themselves on the shelves, the representation that we've already talked about a little bit, and as well as just like the high quality materials and that it's freely available.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit more from the educational standpoint. It's definitely a time of fear in a lot of teachers, school librarians, not knowing how to navigate their role. We employ teachers as our curators at WEPA, and we have teachers who see students one day and not the next and don't know what happened or know that parents have been taken and having to navigate the guardianship. It's scary. They express fear. The really inspiring thing I'd like to share is that I do see school leaders mobilizing the knowledge base, educating staff on how to build spaces when students are present and decide to take, it is a risk. The students are risking themselves walking to school, getting on the bus. When they are here, how do we build emotionally safe spaces? And the libraries are really critical in that in schools because it is one of the spaces that is available to all students regardless of grade level, language proficiency, or program. All of them access that school library. And so prioritizing the displays, prioritizing listening circles that are led by social workers, but also the school librarians are present so that they hear from students what they're feeling on a daily basis. And those have been kind of small moments that have been incorporated. They don't have to be this grandiose social circuits. Like every class time, 5 minutes might be dedicated. But also celebrating that the kids are there. Make sure that you're welcoming them with a smile. I'm so happy to see you. And know that if they don't smile back, it's okay. It's not about you. It is this dual reality of the school is a safe space, artificially. But those things can't always be separated. There's this tandem duality that we're navigating. And so some principals with staff that are willing, principals themselves have been walking kids to and from school to ensure safety. And that experience in itself has been enlightening and also bonding between students and staff. I had a mom at a school, stay-at-home mom, 4 kids, and the father was taken. And so the school has been partnering even with the public library and other organizations to help with utilities, groceries. And so knowing that very rudimentary core support services will be needed during a time like this that go beyond your lesson plan for that day.
I've seen a lot of people talking about those similar aspects of community building that you're describing, right? And it's unfortunate that it takes tragedy sometimes to build that type of community, but you do really see that strengthening, which is the one silver lining that could potentially come out of any of this. But I do love that they're having to step up. I hate that they're having to step up. But in the sense that libraries are about building community, I feel like it's important for us to recognize our place in this moment and how we contribute to shaping that community and welcoming it and ensuring its security or safety in our spaces, at least. And that's about all we have control over, unfortunately. But, making sure that they are welcome, because as you said, all students are welcome. Like, we don't restrict the library to anyone. So, making sure that that comes across loud and clear is especially important right now.
And I think allowing administrations and libraries to pivot quickly, like for instance, for Hispanic Heritage at my daughter's school, they always do a big festival outside in the school grounds. But this year they decided to bring it in the school. So that small little change brings safety to the kids. Like they're like, oh, we're not outside, we're inside. We're still being celebrated and appreciated for our differences, but I feel safe now, and the way that other parents, right, that are stepping up for the parents that can't, like they do the bus walk. Parents who feel safe enough to come out and pick up all the kids from the houses and walk to the school. I'm so appreciative for those people who are like, you know what, I'm going to step up. Because if a school isn't stepping up, but seeing parents step up, that makes the parents go, hey, what are you doing for our kids? And that makes them have to be like, okay, let's do something for our community.
We recently spoke with Amanda Jones, and she was talking about how hard it's been on her to take her stand. But she is doing it for many reasons. But one of them was because she doesn't have to worry about being taken. She doesn't have to worry about being perceived for the color of her skin. So she's saying, I can do this because I don't have to fight those other battles. And I think that's what we're seeing. There are people who are like, I don't have to fight this battle, so I can be support here. We talk a lot about how the library, for many, many, many students, already is a safe place where they don't feel judged. They don't need money. They don't have to have a physical. They don't have to even be a reader, where they're welcome there. And I'm so happy that that's spreading beyond the library walls and maybe filling the whole school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I'm glad that both of you are here to share your expertise on this and your experience with this and the recommendations that you have for librarians or how to approach this issue, because we talk a lot about how librarianship is, unfortunately, still a white-dominated profession. And I don't want to make this about race solely, but, women and white women specifically are found in almost every library. So, we need to know, like, what we can do. To the point Amanda Jones was making, like, we have a space that other people don't have. And we know that we have that privilege. So what can we do with it? And how can we be instrumental in making the change and making those students feel safe who maybe look at us as the problem? Maybe they feel less safe walking into our space if we haven't welcomed them in a way that shows us that we see who they are and we accept who they are.
And it's scary because families are telling their kids probably, like, if you see a white woman with a phone, turn around, go back the other way. If you see this happening, so the kids it's not their fault. The parents are fearful and just telling their kids do these things, right? I mean, during Black Lives Matter, young Black men be careful. Don't talk to white men. Don't put your phone out. Don't do this. Don't do that, you know? And so it's like we're instilling that in our children now. Just walk home. Put your headlights. Don't talk to people. You know, make it home. If somebody's following you, get in there. If you see a black truck, get inside a store. Get inside somewhere, you know? And so that fear of the unknown is being brought to school. And then you have teachers and librarians, and maybe they don't look like them, yet they're like, trust us, talk to us. We want, you know, like, I was told I can't trust you, you know? And so like, that's the situation. Like with libraries, I have a pin that says I speak Spanish because I don't assume I look Latina. So I have it on. And whenever I do trainings on how to do multicultural programs, like that, when you go up to them and you welcome them in Spanish, and just this whole wall just goes down, and the families are like, I wanted to come, I have so many questions, I need, you know, this, and it's like, oh sure, you know. And so when we can provide something that families can just relax, you know, like they come in, maybe it's some signs in Spanish, maybe it's you just saying hello to them in Spanish or something like that, brings so much peace and opens a door of trust.
It's a reality in schools as well, where the predominant practitioner identity is white and monolingual. And so when there is a bilingual staff member or multiple, they're kind of over relied on in a bit. And so I like to really promote that these students are all of ours, and all of us can take steps towards serving them, because you also don't want to over rely on children, giving them adult responsibilities, or overwork your Latino or immigrant workforce. And so the tips are very just approachable, easy. And I think the example you gave, Rosie, is a big one of a skill or mindset that anyone can adopt, of just being curious about those that you serve, those that are around you, and humble. Librarians don't need to speak every language represented in your school community, but I will tell you, students can immediately sense whether their language is being met with openness or discomfort. I remember a school librarian who took genuine curiosity with a group of our Assyrian students. She noticed that they kept saying a phrase to each other, yalla, yalla, yalla. And so instead of dismissing it, she asked what it meant. When they explained it meant something like, let's go, hurry up.
Hurry up. Mm-hmm.
She began using it in a playful way when it was time for independent book selection. And it was such a small gesture, but it completely changed her relationship with the Assyrian students in that school. And they began to even independently offer to teach her new phrases. She didn't ask them to translate or take on more responsibilities. She just showed genuine interest and respect. And that curiosity transformed the school library space into a place where the students felt seen and heard for all the languages in their repertoire. So when multilingualism is treated as a strength rather than an accommodation, go see Rosie for that, students engage more confidently and feel comfortable asking for what they need.
Or just visuals, the displays. Let's say you're a librarian in like a very rural town in Illinois, and you're like, well, I don't know how to start. Start with a book display.
Everybody knows how to do that.
Yeah. Start with a book display. Let those kids see themselves on that shelf and be like, oh, this space means I can be here.
I feel like we could talk about this forever, and in many ways we probably should, but let's talk about some additional challenges that face multilingual learners.
Yeah, because somehow kids still have to learn things while they're enduring all of this.
All of this, and like they still have to go to school and learn, yes.
So one ongoing challenge is a deficit lens. For a long time, the field referred to students primarily as English learners. And that name centers what they're missing rather than the full linguistic repertoire that they already have and bring to any space they navigate. What's been great to see over maybe the past 5-10 years in our state especially is the shift towards multilingual learners. It's an important correction because language alone doesn't, I mean, it's a good correction, but also knowing that the language itself doesn't automatically change the practice that can come through that lens. I've seen students labeled as like not ready or struggling in one classroom, and then the same student is confidently explaining ideas and stories during library time in their home language like moments later. So the issue is never student capacity rather than just the lens that's being used to describe them. From a building level, a big challenge that I've seen is inconsistency or fragmentation. So students might feel affirmed in one classroom or in a particular program within the building, but not across the school as a whole. I had a Venezuelan student when I was a teacher. She loved the ESL classroom and she loved the nurse's office because that's where she had bilingual staff members that saw her, celebrated her, wanted to know more about her. You could literally see her demeanor change as she walks into other spaces in the building. And so in a school building, especially like school libraries, it's a space where you can provide continuity of safety and celebration if they're designed with intention and inclusivity in mind.
I think my thing would be the budget. Public libraries have this problem too. The fiscal responsibility of a library to allocate money for multilingual learning, resources, books, staff. So the removing of knowledgeable staff or giving knowledgeable staff extra work and not financially saying, we know you're doing a lot, here you go, and cutting those literacy resources. Well, this wasn't used, so we're not going to support this anymore. How are you promoting it? Do your students know how to use it? And schools not really working with the public libraries. It's always been us and them, and
We're trying to change that, Rosie.
yeah, we're trying to change it. Like, half school libraries are like, well, we don't have money for that. Well, guess who kind of does? Your public library.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know how to get my kids into research papers and stuff. I do. Bring them to the library. Have the
Partner
library.
with your public library.
Partner with
Yes.
your public library. You may not have money for those Spanish books, but guess what libraries have? Teacher bags. We buy our books from WEPA. You don't have money for it? Guess what? Those books still get to you. I will put them in a bag for you and you can have them in your classroom. We have teacher cards. Well, I don't live in the area. I'm just a teacher in the district. Great. I have teacher cards. You have extended checkout time. I'll throw in some extra resources for you. It's always this like, well, if not this, then nothing. And it's like, we don't have to do that. And schools don't have to do that.
Do the smallest thing, just one thing. Somebody told me this and I can't remember where it came from, but like progress, not perfection. Like do one thing that maybe could help.
I think Rosie makes an important point in that, this type of work does need an investment, right? It requires an investment and intention. We are fortunate to live in Illinois where there is a heavy focus on resource sharing among libraries. So if school libraries aren't participating in interlibrary loan or those types of programs, like reach out to your public library because they probably are. I think almost all the public libraries that are members of the regional library systems, and then also the academic libraries that belong to the consortium Carly, we all share information and resources. So maybe somebody has those teacher bags and maybe it's not in the region where you live, but maybe you can get them in a couple days and then share them with your community.
Or digital resources.
Yes.
Good point.
Let's say you can't. Okay, we're in a blizzard. Like the library has digital resources. We just got Lote for Kids, and I had to advocate. I had to go to my director and be like, I can't carry every language. Limited space. I have a small library. So I'm like, I can't carry every language. Also, sometimes I don't know all the languages in my community, right? And I'm like, but I would really like to offer French books in Urdu, I was like, I would like this. Okay, they bought it for me. Now I've had it for about a quarter. And so they were like, hey, we were checking statistics. So I was like, okay, what can I do? I'm doing a Lotte for Kids story time. So every Wednesday, I'm going to play a book in a different language so that we can hear it, so that families know how to use it. If your classroom, your schools, your students don't know how to use something, teach them, right? We're living in a time where you can record yourself. This is how you would go to this, use this, do that. If you can just offer that, parents know that it's there and then they can use it. Work with your public library. Some libraries are so bougie that they have school liaison on their title. You know, they're meant to go. We're not just going because it's summer reading. We're a 24 hours a day, 365-day resource for those school librarians and teachers. If you can get some resources from a public library in Spanish or in Tagalog, in German or Ukrainian, because that's your community. If we all did that, I don't think people would feel so left out.
As much as I sometimes am really skeptical of using AI for anything, I do feel like large language models are getting much better at translation in some cases. So I feel like that is one area where the digital landscape is probably going to surpass the print landscape, because translation in print is so slow. It's hard. And then I hear from like my relatives in Italy, like how bad it is. Like, you know, you don't also realize, as we learned in the last episode that we recorded from Pernille Rip, how much the American and English publishing industry influences the other industries in the world. So like the global publishing industry. So, you know, lack of good translation is a problem and a barrier for a lot of people.
And availability of the books. I remember like trying, like somebody's like, we have a student, they speak this language. And I'm like, I can't get you anything. That has improved since I left the classroom. But
the reason I bring this up is we want to talk a little bit about how multilingual learners are maybe the same or different than their peers when they use the library. And we see like a lot of community building comes from reading the same books. And if you perhaps don't read the same language, that's harder to do for students. So can you just talk a little bit about how they're the same and maybe how they're different?
I see it more as arterial, meaning similar to how most people initially use a library. It's kind of relational space first. Even when I bring my daughter to the library, she was a baby, we're not over there checking out books, we're playing, you know. Multilingual students, when they go into the school library, they might be browsing visually first, for sure. Linger around a lot, wander, maybe get lost if you have a big one. But that's kind of all the discovery process. You're using the space socially before you see them really engage deeply in text or materials. And some may visually observe that as avoidance. It's more of like discovering what access is present for them. I remember students who would come into the school library together and spend a long time just flipping through books, pointing things out to each other, laughing at illustrations, or just sitting side by side. And at first glance, it looks like they're not using the library in the traditional sense, but they were building familiarity and comfort. Over time, once they felt safe in that space, their use of the library looked very similar to their English proficient peers. They were checking out books, recommending titles, gravitating towards humor, imagination, connection, just like any other student. But I think the relational piece comes first, discovering how accessible is this space for me.
And I always tell people, like, the public library institution is American. A lot of countries, it's changing. A lot of countries don't have that.
that's
I
interesting.
asked my siblings, did you grow up going to the public library in Colombia, in Bogota? They said no. The library was in a university. They didn't have story times and picture books, and I can't check out a laptop and take it home. You know, like they don't have governmental funding to allocate for free materials. That's what a library is. And countries don't have that access. So when I always tell libraries, like, we have families entering libraries and this is their first experience. What do you mean? I get a plastic card that gives me free access. You're not going to need anything from me. I don't have to pay for anything. No, you can come to programs and workshops. When I went to my school library for the first time in my private school, I had never been in a library, right? I think it was either first grade. I think they took us to the school library, and I didn't know about that. I knew that books were expensive because my mom would say books are expensive. I had some books growing up, but when I went there, I remember, like, I can just read any of these, like the librarian explained to me the school library. Yes, you can
So
check
just
out these
learning
books.
how to be and use the library is kind of a first step.
Yeah. And then that school library, I always tell them the school library is that first step in knowing what the public library is, right? It's inside your building. You just walk up some stairs or you go to a room and there it is, right? And so that's their experience. And so if you can give them that experience of that, then the public library won't be so daunting. What I like about one of my libraries is that when the public librarian visits the school, she gives all the kids a coupon that says redeemable at the library, and they get to pick out a prize from our treasure chest. But to know how many of those kids come, that's a healthy public library relation.
It's also an easy way to measure who's coming, or like to your point of how many people are coming, because sometimes you do wonder, like, am I reaching anyone? Is anyone taking advantage of this? So I love that.
So one of the schools would do, they would have a community college come and teach English. And so when those parents would come to that, because that's a vital free class the school was offering, they would have social workers. They would have the public library. They would have, they really tried to, like, we want to give everything because the parents are here because we're giving them this. They had babysitting at the gym and they provided pizza. One of the main things I've done is I created a flyer that explains the library because they don't know. I remember one of my families, the son puts his library card and he tells his mom, I'll buy them. I'll buy these for you.
I love that.
I do love that too. Like, it's on me, Mom.
But that's the ownership and that's the connection and that's what you want to see, right? Like, you want all of your patrons to feel that.
So let's jump to, what advice would you have for a school librarian trying to make their library more inclusive for multilingual students? And then along with that, what does it look like when a multilingual student feels like they belong in a library?
Yeah, I think, and Rosie has mentioned this, starting with visibility, inclusion should live where students first look. Signage, displays, entry points are critical. So ensuring that nothing is tucked away collecting dust in a back corner, for example. I've seen something as simple as a welcome sign or a small display in multiple languages immediately changes how students physically move through a space. You will see them walk in and immediately smile. Their body language changes. Students who previously might have hesitated start entering more confidently, lingering longer, interacting more, and all of that is qualitative data that if you're sitting at a desk, write that down. How many, if you're tracking a particular student or group of students that you're really trying to target with materials and engagement, qualitative data is just as valuable as concrete numbers. And so they interact more. You don't have to do everything at once. I think that can very much become a mountain. The heart is there. You want to do everything possible, but starting with small approaches and consistency matters much more than perfection and accuracy.
Yeah, like putting out those bilingual bookmarks, putting up a banner during Hispanic Heritage Month, authentically, respectfully, no sombreros, when you provide those resources, like when you're on Epic, you can pick these languages. If you're on Tumble Books, these are languages available. Also, in cultures, like siblings are always take care of their younger siblings. So I always have those 9-year-olds that are grabbing stuff for their 4-year-old brother or sister. And they're always like, oh, these books, these bookmarks, yeah, these coloring sheets. And then I was just like, ooh, you have a lot. Oh, it's because these are for my sister at home. And they're also advocating for them, right? Like, we're a community, and that sense of, if that sense of community is in your school library, that's integral. And it doesn't take too much to do that, right? You can order some bookmarks from iRead, and you can have some important people of different cultures, their pictures just up on the board, print them up. It doesn't have to be fancy, but the intention to start is where it's at, and ask questions. I always tell people, like, message me, Rosie, I'm going to do this flyer. How do I do this flyer? How do I translate this flyer? Be careful with Google Translate.
Yes, definitely.
I know when something's been Google translated.
Canva has an add-on feature that's also free. That's great for marketing materials. So translating. So if you're scared of, in working there, how do I even put up a flyer in multiple languages? Canva is a great resource, better than Google Translate. Not perfect, but like I said, it's a good first step, and that can be utilized by any practitioner identity. That way you're not over relying on a school parent liaison, a school secretary. I've seen school janitors, tapped on the shoulder, which is great to have community, but you also want to build efficacy in everyone so that it's truly a school community and it's not a few personnel that are responsible for a particular population.
And if you do, pay them.
Yes, that's a whole other job. Yes.
I'm glad that you're talking about some of these places to go for resources and information, because I do think that fear of doing it wrong is what stops a lot of people from trying, right? You talk about authentic representation and accuracy and making sure that you're responsible and respectful. And I think a lot of people want to make sure they're doing the right thing. So in doing so, they kind of do nothing. It's like the paradox of choice and the decision making, and like, what do? I don't want to do anything wrong, so I'll just do nothing. I want to really put it out there that we need to give people a little bit more grace for trying. And I do feel like there's good resources, but I was wondering if you have any other resources people might look to within their community, aside from the public library as a place to start, or, these digital resources that we're talking about, where to look for community organizations that could help you do this kind of work.
We've linked with cultural centers. So especially if you're looking at a particular demographic, for example, when we were embarking on acquiring Romanian materials, I'm not Romanian. I don't know that language. But as an ESL teacher, I knew how to navigate the community. In immigrant cultures, everybody knows someone and they all want to help, especially if it's something that lifts their culture. And so even if the cultural center is not in your suburb, most cultures, especially in Chicagoland area, have a cultural center somewhere. And so we called the cultural center, spoke to the front desk person, spoke to the president, who gave me the number of someone else, and knowing that that's the immigrant way, that's a community way. It's a shift from U.S. norms where everything is very individually centered to leaning on community to join forces when you're trying to push an initiative. There are also interpreting organizations. When I was a teacher, we used LARC. And even now at WEPA, we've used LARC for translation of metadata, material metadata, for example. At the time where the war in Russia and Ukraine really burst, they were operating under a federal grant. And so all Ukrainian translations were covered. And so really knowing interpreting organizations around you, schools use them, your director of language and culture knows them, your ESL coordinator, because they're state mandated. And so depending on who you're serving, there might even be grants available to translate and interpret at no cost.
I have a list that I'm constantly compiling. For instance, if I want to do Indian culture and I don't speak any of the languages, a very diverse country with many different dialects. And so it's like, I would want to provide that. I know who to go to. A lot of publishers like Biribao, Canticos, from different countries, they provide you with printouts. So if you're like, I don't know what to do in my classroom, print it out, leave it out with some books. Canticos and Little Libros. Little Libros has a whole digital resource on their website for teachers. I think it's $10 and you get like 100 and something digital files, coloring sheets, worksheets, word books, like different stuff like that. All those are available to teachers. So if you don't know where to go to your library and be like, hey, I'm a teacher and I want to provide these languages. I don't know where to go. Or Google people, you're following social media. There's some amazing multicultural librarians out there or authors out there, and that brings accessibility. And so you can even sometimes message them. I'm a teacher. I don't know where to start, and they'll help you. I always tell people, contact me. My job as a librarian and as a multicultural advocate is to bring these resources so that people who want them have access and they know where to go. Because that can be overwhelming, right? The whole, do I Google it? How do I know this is a trusted source, right? Because that's also important, is to provide trusted resources with correct information.
I remember we had some Spanish speakers in our library, and I was really proud of myself. I had gone out, I found all the most popular books, and I'm like, I'm really, really, really bringing it. And then it was a joke, when I would check out the kids, one after the other. I'm like, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and then that kid comes up and I'm like, I think I know how to say 2 weeks in Spanish. So I said it. And that got the bigger smile than any of the brand new books. I was always afraid to try because I'm like, what if they start speaking Spanish? And then I have to admit, I don't know any other Spanish.
Yeah, but how cool that they would feel comfortable speaking Spanish to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that goes back to the story that Veronica told earlier, right? It's all about trying and connecting with them in a way that shows that you value who they are. We do let our fear stop us, and our fear of...
We do.
Adults feel like we have to be perfect. We don't want to do things wrong. And that's where the grace comes in. You have to give yourself grace to not know everything and to learn from someone who sometimes is 5 years old.
Yes.
And the families know, right? They know that they've left their Spanish-speaking country for this country. So they know they're already a little out of the loop. So when you try and you say, 2 semanas, adios, bienvenidos, they're like, oh, I like this. They'll giggle with you. Maybe they'll say something else.
And then they make fun of your accent. That happens.
Yes.
Yeah, but that effort is there. And those kids, it just matters so much to them. It's those little subtleties. You can print out a coloring sheet in Urdu for birthdays and just be like, here you go. Here's my list of different birthdays and different names in different countries. And so that way my kid knows when my student comes in, they'll know.
That's so cool. I love the idea of the multilingual birthday wishes.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah, I always like to remind practitioners that if a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old can live all day, 8 hours a day in a English setting, then adults can learn a few phrases.
Oh, 100%.
So kind of flipping the script, we can do this. You can learn a few phrases and hey, explore along the way.
So that brings us to the end of our time. Unfortunately, I would love talking to you both, but let's talk about shelf care. The world is a heavy place to be right now. So if you are comfortable sharing, let us know how you are taking care of yourself right now.
I fell for one of those Instagram ads and I clicked on about a journal. So I start every workday with 5 minutes of journaling. It was called the Dig Deeper Journal. I love it because it has chapters and then the prompts are already built in. It reduces the thinking load and the pressure of a blank page. And so some of the chapters are like purpose, gratitude, growth. And I just let my mind kind of gravitate towards whichever one feels good for me that morning. But I do it 5 minutes before I start my workday. I have it at work just because my mornings are so chaotic. I have grumpy kids, sometimes happy kids, racing, cereal spilled. Mornings at home are crazy, so I like just before I settle myself into work, have it on my desk 5 minutes. My laptop is closed. Everything is my cell phone is off. 5 minutes of the journal prompt is there. No commitment. Sometimes it's 2 sentences. Sometimes it's a few words. But I find this to be very doable for me.
I love that.
I like that it has prompts in it because I do think for me, that's always the hardest part.
Yeah. My mind goes blank when I'm confronted with a piece of paper to write on.
I thought you were going to say when you were confronted with your own thoughts.
That too, yes.
Lately, I've been baking. So Mondays are the day I start later. I work in the evenings on Mondays. So I call it my Me Mondays. And I don't book appointments. I don't do anything. I take my daughter to school and then I come home and then I just stay and do stuff for myself. And so lately I've been, this is really dorky. Okay.
No, I'm here for this. I'm like, good for you. I'm like, when can I schedule my me day? Does it have to be Monday? Can it be any other day?
Any other day that you can find. But like my daughter goes to school, my sister goes to school because she works at the school. And then it's like, it's just quiet. So usually I was doing like my own nails or like my facials or whatever, but now I moved on to baking. And so I'm going through this book called Tasting History with Max Miller.
Oh, that sounds like a blast.
He goes through like the origin of recipes, like the original Girl Scout cookie. So like how to make it and whatever. And so I've been doing that.
What I've learned is I'm going to be going to Rosie's house on Mondays.
What I've learned is I'm going to go check this book out. This sounds fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait.
I take all my baked stuff to work. So everyone at work
yeah.
has been loving
That's
it
nice.
because I'll be like, I'm testing this out.
Janette, I'll just make a road trip and we'll go visit Rosie. So is there anything else that you want to add or promote before we wrap up?
Yeah, so this summer, ALA will be at Chicago. You can come and visit me at the ALA Editions booth. We'll be signing copies of our book, Storytime Survival Guide, talking about the difficult topics that storytellers are facing in public libraries and how to make their story times inclusive and welcoming for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, talking about ALA, we will be there, I will be there, and we're still waiting for the decision from ALA, be doing a stage presentation with René Leva and a bilingual author, Miguel Briones. He wrote the picture book, Macho No Machismo, and the title is Leveraging Latino Culture in Library Systems, a view of leadership, but also practical tips. There will be a luchador performance on there as well. So we're hoping for that to get approved. And I will see you at ALA, Rosie.
I think a lot of us will see you there as well.
Yes.
I really hope that does get approved. That sounds amazing.
It does.
If there's anybody out there who has never been to ALA, from my experience, like AASL just took place in St. Louis last fall. So a lot of school librarians may not go to ALA, especially since it's during their summer break. But you can buy an exhibits only pass. And I will say a lot of really great programming takes place on the stages in the exhibit hall. There's signings and free books and all kinds of really great stuff. So there's my plug for the exhibit hall at ALA.
All right. Well, we would like to thank Rosie Camargo and Veronica Ramos for joining us today. I had a blast. I hope our listeners did. We appreciate you coming on. For our listeners, we'd like you to let us know if you have any questions about any of our episodes or topic ideas you'd like to see us cover. As always, you can leave us a voicemail on our hotline at 630-734-5015. Until next time, stay legit and don't quit.